There's a Megadeth record, Cryptic Writings, that I actually
love that one.
Yeah, and it's funny. It was the first record we did with Dan Huff. He was very new in his producing career. He had a good team of people working there, but we used PV amps for the bass stuff, and then Marty Friedman had a crate guitar amp, and I said, let me plug into that too.
Okay.
And we kind of what we did, we low gained it, but it was enough that it had the Lemmy kind of thing.
Right. Boys and girls, let's talk bass guitar. Today I want to talk about dirty, clanky, metal bass guitar tones. And I want to do that with no other than the guy who has been the bassist on all the legendary Megadeth records. I want to say hello to Mr.
Clank himself.
Dave Ellefson, welcome.
Hey, thank
How you doing?
Thank you, Christian. Great to be here, man. I'm glad to be here.
I'm very honored to have you here, man. To be working with you. We just had a great almost a week now. Yeah, something
almost
like that.
a week, yeah.
So we are recording, producing the debut album of Dave's new band. But you know what surprised me the most? Like when the guys got in touch and asked me, like, do you want to record this album? Do you want to do the bass recording session with Dave? And I was like, of course I want to do this. I totally expected you to come here to tell me, like, this is my amp, these are my pedals, and this is my cab, and I want you to use that mic because this is my tone, and that's how it has always been, blah, blah, blah. But the opposite happened. So you came here, said, like, this is a new project, so we got to create the new tone for it.
I'm coming here going, okay, I'm kind of the blank canvas for you to create on, right? Because I come into records going, okay, we've hired a producer, right, to use your expertise, your ears, not just to get tone, because sonically placing everything sort of within the frequency map and getting everything to sort of sit where it needs to so you can hear everything is part of your craft. The other part is your ears and your musical instincts. And I think probably for us, we can probably plug into some plug-in USB box into a laptop and get some tone that'll be reasonable, right? Well, we want it to be better than reasonable. We want it to be amazing, and obviously your reputation and your ears was part of that calling.
But you're also like open for new ideas. So
totally.
Like, I mean, we found, maybe we can spill the beans here. We found a tone that I think is way more dirty than what you used to do.
Totally, yeah.
Because it was the right thing to do for this kind of music, right?
Well, you made a comment about Guilherme's guitars, that they're this kind of sort of like, I'll just use the word lo-fi. It's not this really high gain, saturated tone. In fact, it's funny, I sat down with John Eccolino, who is my friend back home in Arizona. I'd cut about probably half of the DIETH bass tracks at his studio. We've obviously met now.
The Focusrite room, right?
Yeah, the Focusrite room, yep. And, one day we sat down, we were A-Bing a track that I had done a couple years ago, and we put it up against Megadeth Dystopia and Judas Priest Firepower. And it was interesting how my guitars on my track were slightly overgained. The Megadeth Dystopia track was probably gained. You would never want to go probably any more than that. It was really reaching the saturation point. And then we listened to Judas Priest Firepower, and there's very clean kind of Gibson through a Marshall sound that had real power that you could feel like your pant leg moving, almost like a bass would do, right? And so it's interesting that in a record like this, we walk in, the guitars and the drums are done. And obviously Mihal really hits the drum well. He's very clean, he has a lot of clarity. He gets a real note out of the drum when he hits it, right? Guilherme's guitar tone is what it is. So probably you and me together, but certainly you sitting at the desk going, okay, I got to fit Ellefson in there somewhere.
Where do we put him?
and playing bass, as much as bass is this foundational instrument, in certain types of music, you would record it first. And I, decades ago, used to cut bass and drums first. Finally, I don't know, by like the late 90s, I was like, you know what? Let's cut guitars and drums, and then I'll fill the bass in.
Which is today's standard.
It is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I started doing that. Those records had, in my opinion, the better bass tone for me.
Okay.
And so I think we accomplished the same thing because we came in here, and look, I literally flew halfway around the world I brought my modulus bass. I brought a Jackson bass.
Which sounds great. Yeah. They both sound great.
Yeah.
But
well, the Jackson is a wood instrument. It's a great performance instrument, but wood is going to have, in my opinion, its limitations. The modulus with the bolt-on and the graphite. The graphite is just true every day. Wood will change. Over time, with the humidity, even with these different things.
But that bass has the clank.
You said it best. You walked by it, went bang, and went, that's the bass. Yeah. You can just tell.
Like a piano wire. Bang.
Exactly. That's the one right there.
And I'll see if I get a signal. There he is. That already sounds good. Sound check done.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. I was open to all this different amps, different pedals, different things. I'm not a pedal guy. To me, I'm about as hit the string as quickly as I can get it into the amp to the speaker to the mic. You know, I try to not have that. And this was really fun to experiment all the pedals that you have. Yeah.
And we ended up with a bunch of tracks. By the way, so we filmed the entire sound check, like the tone finding, us trying stuff. And we filmed the recording session of one song where we also were quite creative about all the parts.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1. Sounded good to me.
Ended up with a bunch of tracks, like not only the DI track, we have several microphones with different cabinets. We have distortion pedal. We even split the signal into another guitar amp from MLC, you remember?
Yeah.
Which has like a more Lemmy kind of distortion.
Really good sounding. And you pointed out a tone out of that guitar amp. There's a Megadeth record, Cryptic Writings, that I actually
love that one.
Yeah, and it's funny. It was the first record we did with Dan Huff. He was very new in his producing career. He had a good team of people working there. But we used PV amps for the bass stuff. And then Marty Friedman had a Crate guitar amp. And I said, let me plug into that too.
Okay.
And we kind of what we did, we low gained it, but it was tough that it had the Lemmy kind of thing.
Right.
So, but just to run that separate track. So we did a similar type of thing. But as you had mentioned, that MLC had a very different tone. That was not a Marshall. It's not a diesel. It's not any of that kind of stuff.
Now we have like a clank fader and a dirt fader, so we can blend the MLC amp. Depending on which riff it is, which song it is, we can like bring in more Lemmy.
Come on in, Lemmy.
I just visited Cameron Webb in Orange County like half a year ago, and we did a bass session together, reamping some bass tones through Lemmy's original amps.
Right.
And that's like so different from anything else you have done. Like he's using everything, like everything.
I'm surprised he still has all those amps. It doesn't shock me because it's funny with me, basses and even amps are just tools to be used for a while. And when I kind of move on from them, I don't mind giving them away, donating them, selling them, signing them.
But Lemmy is the opposite of you in that regard, because he's the guy who comes in and you can't tell him like, hey, I got some new fresh ideas. Why don't we change your tone?
Right.
We're like, what the fuck? Cameron actually told me like he tried like on the first Motorhead records he did. He tried to like, hey, Lemmy, can we maybe change this or add a clean track or have a DI track as well? And Lemmy, he was like, it's like
you said what?
Yeah, like,
you
what
said
the
what?
Fuck? I was like,
and it's interesting because we actually worked with I worked with Cameron on a Megadeth record, Super Collider. Great, fantastic, and I was always kind of mesmerized by Lemmy stories. When anybody works on a Motorhead record, I mean that's pretty much like working with Elvis, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's next level, out of this world kind of stuff. So.
I mean, it took me like 1 hour to get all. He even has like those drawings because Lemmy used to draw, so he was sitting in the studio drawing every day. So
Really?
Cameron has like several books where Lemmy just was drawing like comics and just you're making fun of guys. So he showed me those books. It's like,
wow. When I grew up, even in Minnesota, when I was playing, fingers or pick, and I'd want to play with my fingers because it kind of seemed more of a show-off thing. Steve Harris, Geddy Lee, whatever. And then, you know, the producer says, "Hey, can you just play some eighth notes? You know, like just da 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 da, you know, and to the click, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I thought it was the drummer's job to play to a click. And it's like, no, everybody needs to have a good time and play to the click. And quite honestly, when I moved to California, we'd started Megadeth. I was still kind of trying to do the finger thing, always knowing that I liked the tone better from a pick.
Yeah.
I liked pick players as a fan. I usually like their tone. I like the approach to their bass
But
lines.
it just looks cooler to be like...
Yeah, right. It looks cooler to do that, right? But there, and there's a bass snob thing. Like, oh, dude,
Yeah.
he used the pick. He should have used his fingers.
I just because if you want to have like a modern metal, clanky metal bass tone, you can do it with your fingers. But I usually tell people you can get a nail into the wall with your fingers. Why don't you just use a hammer?
Better with a hammer.
Right.
Yeah,
it's just easier.
I lock better to the click. I lock better to the drums. You know, the Dystopia record I was telling you, I was the first one to record bass to a click. No guitar, no drums, nothing.
Wow.
So that's kind of how far I had progressed in just keeping time, you know? And when I've been in the studio a few times and didn't have good time or maybe didn't prepare enough, those are the moments that, you know, these microphones don't lie, you know, and they really, they not only accentuate your greatness, they will absolutely accentuate your weaknesses.
Right.
And so, you know, I think on this record coming in, there's even a couple of tunes that I'd spent a couple of days in Frankfurt before we came down into the studio that Guilherme had sent over. Oh, by the way, here's 3 more. I'm like, oh my gosh. All right. So I just literally sat and I woodshedded and I just wrote some charts. And so I could at least have a roadmap to walk into and or walk in with. And
but then again, we were very spontaneous and relaxed about
100%.
In the end, I mean, what I've learned like from doing records for more than 20 years is basically it's all about the record. Whatever works.
100%.
Fingers, picks, whatever.
And parts. You know, it isn't, you know, gear's one part of it, obviously. But, you know, parts. Like there's the one track where it was in what I didn't play. And you were great at that. You were saying, hey, man, how about right here? Let's match the kick drum. And we'll even add some kick drums to let's create a bass part. We'll even add more kick drums in order to make this really syncopated thing, which made it very groovy, very listenable, gave it nice ear candy within the bass line. And quite honestly,
before hitting the chorus where things get big again, where you have some legato notes, the opposite of that. Yeah.
And those are the musical things that I like from producers. You know, once I started realizing, you know, you've had a lot of experience over in this particular genre. All of a sudden I walked in a bit more humbled going, well, these guys have a lot more experience in this genre than I do, right? And walk in and kind of go, well, if they think this is what I should do here, I'm just the painter with the paintbrush, you know what I mean? Like, it's the blank canvas, like, tell me what to paint. Use red here. Hey, David, paint blue over here, you know?
If everybody's open-minded and everybody is like willing to, you know, improvise, to listen to each other, that's how you make great records.
I agree.
Right. If you have, but mostly you have someone who is complicated or like someone who can be a pain in the ass. Killing the atmosphere, and then it doesn't matter which mics you use and which, you know, it's all gone.
Death metal drumming has probably advanced and elevated itself to a higher level than probably most any other genre of drumming. The quality of the kit, the cymbals, the placement of things, like you can tell a guy
double kick,
they sit down at the kit. You can see by how they place the kit. And how what they're walking into their kit and sitting down, just like, this guy knows what he's doing. And I found that when we shot the video a few months ago, which is the first time I'd met
in person,
Guilherme or Michal in person, and just watching how he played and how he hit the drum said different. Everything I needed to know about how this guy's going to be as a musician.
Yeah, and I have recorded with some of the most extreme drummers in this field, and it's impressive. But they are also special. You know, I've learned how to deal with a lot of them. I gotta be honest. But I love them all because.
Well, we talked about the OCD. I think it was some drummers that and they're very, you know, kind of like. Does not compute. We, you know, what Wayne's World, right? Yeah. We fear change. We fear change, right?
Death metal drummers. I hope you enjoyed our little conversation. If you want to see more of Mr. Dave Ellefson and me, you can, because we filmed the entire bass recording session we did here at Kohle Audio Studios. That means you can watch the entire sound check, see us checking out and comparing different bass pedals, amps, cabinets, and microphones, but you can also see us recording one complete song, see us working on the different riffs and having a lot of fun, like this.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Just loop it like that.
Okay.
Another interesting riff where we can try a few things. First I would do nothing, just let the guitar get up. Now the screw, get up. Bam, bam, with the top bam, 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 get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up. And we wanted to add the kick there. Get up, yeah. Get up, get up, get up, get up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bam, bam. Wonderful.
And the interesting part is that this is not really a course. It's more like a documentary. It's the real thing. So you can be a fly on the wall during a real recording session with Dave Ellefson and me, which is kind of unique, I guess. Anyway, I'll put a link here to another YouTube video where you can see parts of that course, and there's a link below to the course itself. Do I have anything else? Yes, if you're looking for some great bass tones, here's a little recommendation. There's a fantastic sounding bass IR pack, because you know what? During the session with Dave Ellefson, where we used 3 different orange cabinets, 115, 410, and 810, I used the chance to record some really cool sounding IRs with a lot of microphones, mix ready IRs. And on some of those IRs, I even blended some Eminence guitar speakers in for more mid-grind, especially if you're looking for more distorted bass tones. And this bass pack, IR pack, was released together with Orange and Eminence Digital. Another link below, another link to a video where I show you this IR pack. Am I trying to sell you a course and an IR pack? Yes, I am, because the course is fun, and the IR pack, I believe, is the only bass IR pack you will ever need for rock and metal bass tones. It's really versatile and cool and mix ready. Anyway, enough creepy promotion. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Dave. Looking forward to meeting Dave at NAMM in January. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to see more fantastic and very entertaining videos with your favorite German bald dude. I'm trying to be funny today, right? So, I mean, yeah. The funny German humor again. Anyway, that's all for today once again. How often have I said that now? I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being here, man.
And I came up with a name. I think the bass tone is the angry rhinoceros. I think that's what it is.
It is. Remember that.